I ended up, quitting biotechnology and really pouring my passion into the foods, the chemistry of foods, how we can choose foods that better align with us spiritually and help us resonate to be all we can be. And I saw the transformation of my daughter with the autism, with so much inflammation, so much brain inflammation, particularly, but all over the inflammation, and really trying to control the foods. And at 4 years old, it's much more easier as a parent to control the foods as a 4 year old, and really seeing the transformation in her, really seeing her spirit come out where she's able to express and be more of a person who is not suffering, but literally saying, these are the best days ever.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, my custom is to welcome our guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things that deem very expensive time. 24 hours has been offered to every single soul that has landed on this planet. How we utilize that 24 hours is going to tell us a lot about you, man. I was ignorant of the value of her, but when I learned about her, she guided me. My relationships became richer. My encounters became richer. I introduced you guys to come visit her. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful has created this individual that is before us. And I cannot wait to access what that journey has deposited in her: wisdom, knowledge, insights. Why? Because you and I will become better human spirits while we're here on this planet. And we want to honor Katherine the coming to Threads of Enlightenment. Welcome to Threads.
Thank you for having me on your show, Ken.
It's an honor. And for those that are going to be listening to this podcast, I want all of the Threads of Enlightenment family to, I know it'll be a couple of weeks out of it, but I want you guys to send energy of love and peace to her because she has just lost a family member. And I want you guys to surround her with that energy so that she can walk through and learn who she is and learn about the power of her sister while she has vacated this current plane. The question that I usually ask everyone when they come to the show is about that latter part of the journey. And the question is this: how do you serve mankind?
And you'd like me to answer that?
Oh, yeah.
Not, and I see just in the few minutes that we had our intro before recording, I think, like you said, there's a need to help people guide through their suffering and their trauma and recognizing pain and being that calm energy source. So I started off very much with the food journey, helping people, really identify how the maybe toxic inflammatory foods were not helping them and almost contributing to their suffering and their pain. My book, Fat, Stressed, and Sick: MSG Processed Foods in America's Health Crisis, discusses glutamate and how this glutamate entity in the food supply really is causing a lot of inflammation. But there's a lot of spiritual about the glutamate. Our thoughts, if they're negative, if they're suffering, if they're pain, if they're repetitive fear, will actually release glutamate in our body to help us with this survival response. So there's a spiritual element there too about, really being aware of your breath and your thoughts and finding the resonance of calm, peaceful, joy, happy, abundance. And that can actually really reduce this glutamate signaling as well as just kind of connect you to the energy of the universe. And I find that when I'm working with people one-on-one now, there's a very much a spiritual component to it as well as the food because the glutamate is crossing in both of these entities. So, my just what I'm very passionate about is helping guide people to that, connecting with others that are also willing to receive that message. They may not be there, but they're willing to receive the message. They want to have some guidance. And then, surrounding and creating a community where we really want to be thriving, not just barely surviving. We want to be finding the joy energy in life. And like you said, pre-recording session, we likely come into this world with trauma. We end with trauma. Trauma throughout our life helps guide our journey. And certainly trauma guided my journey here to find this, food and spiritual element, because my youngest was diagnosed with autism, and it definitely was a mom trauma response. And the scientist in me was like, okay, how can I help my child through this journey, and food was a huge component.
Yeah, the relationship to the food supply and the human being is an important relationship because it is the the food is the tool by which we sustain our body. And if the tool is messed up, our bodies are going to be messed up. And there's a movie came out a long time ago about corporations. It's called, I think it's Corporations. And it goes in about the corporations when they came in the 50s and stuff like that. And especially those that were dealing with food and the knowledge and the data that they had and how it introduced many diseases into the world back then. And so it's very important for us to learn and develop a healthy relationship with food. One of the customs that we have here in at Threads is to go back to our beginnings, if you will, the
Mhm.
beginning of our beginnings, I tell people. And that is usually a family unit. We call them the family. And in this unit, we have mom and dad. And today we have many different types of family, but family is family. We have this group, we are introduced and we are going to learn some things in there. Communication skills. We're going to learn habits. We're going to learn thought patterns. And we're going to learn a bunch of fun things right there. This is where we are created. What was your family unit like?
As I just lost my sister on Sunday, she was definitely part of my family unit. So I was the oldest of the three kids of my mom and dad. Excuse me. And my parents never resolved their trauma, so there was definitely a lot of trauma in the family unit throughout childhood. I do, remember and recall, experience, memory, vibration, a lot of trauma because
Yeah.
that my parents really weren't in the present, in the calm, and hadn't resolved a lot of their, trauma. And unfortunately, as a young adult, when I was having children, I also didn't resolve my trauma before my children entered the world. And so now where I'm at, I'm really now trying to embrace and bring the family to a more calm, we are here now. And, some family members are allowing that to resonate with them and some aren't. I'd say most aren't, but I can only model and,
Mm-hmm.
really find my passion, my peace, and resonate what I feel is where I'm at. And just, they're either connecting with me or they're bouncing off of me or whatnot. But like you said, we come into the world with trauma. I definitely saw my sister pass with a lot of trauma. Excuse me. So does that answer your question about
Yeah.
the journey and
Let me
entry
ask
into
you,
this world?
let me ask you this way as well. As the firstborn, usually when there is a traumatic family life and dysfunctional family life, which all of us have, the firstborn picks up some underlying things. And sometimes it's spoken, sometimes it's not, but they, eldest, will pick it up because they feel that there's a need for them to be in that space. Some of that is protector. Some of that is the one that will shield from different things. Being in that space, Katherine, what did you pick up as the eldest?
Yeah, definitely the protector. My sister and I were the closest in age. My brother was 17 years younger than me. So there was a significant age gap between us. And so I find that I'm the protector of him now as
Yeah.
he's an adult, but as a young adult and just kind of graduated from high school, I really he wasn't part of my childhood, and so I didn't have that kind of protective thing. My sister definitely was had that protective element over my younger brother, so definitely protector. My both my siblings came out to California where I'm at, to be a family unit, and my sister, in that toxic environment, it was trying to guide her, here's how you go to kindergarten, here's what we can do, We were also very much the same size because she
Mm-hmm.
was a bigger person than me in terms of physical size, maybe a bigger person spiritually, but for sure it was protector.
And as the protector, and then you're moving through your life and you gathering steam, if you will, to become an adult. And you're heading towards, college, high school, and that type of stuff. How were you relating to others outside of the family? Again, your internal home situation is traumatic. How did you show up outside of the family dealing with
Yeah.
others?
No, it's interesting, and it wasn't until I got out of the home unit in college, and boarding at college that I realized how toxic the family dynamic was. It wasn't until I got out. And of course, that kind of played throughout where I'm choosing relationships that were mirroring my family
Hmm.
unit, and kind of that trauma kept repeating because I hadn't resolved it myself. And I think that still continues to be a process. But it really, I almost was embarrassed, had shame the extent to which I experienced that trauma in my childhood, and didn't want to reveal that when I was in college and as a young adult. Certainly my intimate relationships, I would start to, reveal that. Even my close friendships, they didn't know until after I graduated from college and after I started, having my first child when I was in graduate school. That's when, I was like, okay, I need to just kind of open up, and here's me, and here's my journey,
Hmm.
including the trauma from childhood.
As you were looking at college, you mentioned you were there. What field of study did you pick and why did you pick it?
Yeah, I chose science very early, chemistry. And, I just recall, like, even as young as sixth grade, just being fascinated with, you add one thing and another thing and it changes into a different thing. So the
Hmm.
transformation of molecules with the combination of molecules, and physically, or, being able to see either the heat dissipation, the color changes, the physical changes of those molecules. So I definitely intensified my course selections in high school, with chemistry, and then pursued chemistry in undergrad and then in graduate school.
And once you graduated, if you will, and you have your tassels out and you're done, you toss it up in the air, as they say, and
Yeah.
you're looking at your future as you're heading out further. Where did you end up?
Yeah, and that's a fascinating journey. So, I think my analytical brain kind of took over my emotional brain to some extent, where I analyzed a lot through my journey, and chemistry allowed me to do that. So after graduate school, going into biotechnology and desiring to help people through the technology of, drug development or medical devices, and desiring to know that these contributions were helping people through their journey. I definitely tossed that out the window when my youngest was diagnosed with autism. I felt like the biotechnology was a little bit soul sucking in terms of the corporation philosophy and the corporation dynamics and such. And so I ended up, quitting biotechnology and really pouring my passion into the foods, the chemistry of foods, how we can choose foods that better align with us spiritually and help us resonate to be all we can be. And I saw the transformation in my daughter with the autism, with
Hmm.
so much inflammation, so much brain inflammation, particularly, but all over the inflammation, and really trying to control the foods. And at 4 years old, it's much more easier as a parent to control the foods as a 4 year old, and really seeing the transformation in her, really seeing her spirit come out where she's able to express and be, more of a person who is not suffering, but literally saying, these are the best days ever. This is the best day ever. Just so much excitement and exuberance, which really didn't exist prior to kind of really attacking the food. And glutamate really was something that she was significantly sensitive to, very inflamed. And I do think, again, from this trauma response, she had a lot of trauma at birth, that she was just very predisposed to this glutamate signaling, and
Yeah.
that just exacerbated some of this trauma response. So I would see her eating foods like the standard American diet that we shouldn't even call food, and I would literally see a trauma response that she was experiencing from food alone.
Yeah.
And that then would exacerbate the other trauma response with repetitive thinking, and some of the tantrums or whatnot that were very uncalmed thoughts. I'm dying, my mom's dying, my dad, just very uncalmed, fearful thoughts. And I would just see a very different thought pattern just based on the food she.
And as you delve deeper into the process of the effects of food, if you will, on the human psychic and the body, as you delve deeper into the data and see the correlation between the data and the behavior, Once you began to put those two together, how did you begin to manage your life, number one, and then your daughter's life as you are gaining this information and seeing the effects? As you mentioned, you're actually seeing it in real time
Mhm.
with your daughter. What did it prompt you to do as you're collecting and rearranging both your eating habit and your daughter's?
Yeah, I mean, I decided to accompany her on the food journey so that she didn't feel excluded or feeling like, where she has to eat this way, but the rest of the family can eat, the other way. And it was transformational for me too. I mean, I didn't realize what brain fog was until I started to eat more properly. I felt like I was then living life through rose-colored glasses, and it was the exact
Yeah.
same life. So it's like I shifted dimensions of vibrational frequency as a result of changing the food in my body that allowed me to resonate better on a much higher frequency of joy, appreciation, abundance, calm, peace. And that allowed me to have a lot more energy to be like, wow, I really want to share this experience with others. Again, there's some people that would say food has nothing to do with the brain or has anything to do with anything. You can eat whatever you want. And those are not the people that I'm trying to reach. I'm trying to reach those
Yeah.
people that really the message resonates with them. They want more information. They can appreciate how they're not feeling well. They're feeling more depressed or anxious after some foods or obsessive thinking, even obesity, an energy imbalance in the body. There's a lot of things going on with the foods and what they're putting in the foods to keep
Hmm.
people, like you said, in this disease state. And that then perpetuates the need for this whole medical system and this big, percentage of our GDP. And so, that's my contribution is, here's my, I call myself the food doctor. I've really went deep diving into the chemistry of what they're doing to the food supplies and how we can protect ourselves with this knowledge. But the transformation for me was just incredible where I'm like, oh, now I have the energy and the passion and saw the experience to share this with others. And the book took me about 10 years to write, Fat, Stressed,
Hmm.
and Sick, MSG, Processed Foods, and America's Health Crisis really had a lot of different versions. But it really is about how I came to discover the food supply is, really there to make us sick. And we have to be very knowledgeable about what we're choosing to eat. And this glutamate thing really honestly made me mad when I discovered how much, glutamate was being hidden in the food supply.
It's in
It's not
everything.
on food ingredient labels, and it made it very difficult for those to become aware or to make good choices because it's being hidden in the food supply. And it's
Yeah.
hidden intentionally because glutamate can be very addicting.
That's
And
why they
so
put
it's
it
all
there.
about market share for them and the food corporations. And for
Yeah.
us, it's about thriving. And so that's my passion. How can I help others thrive? So now, whether it's food or, hey, nature, or how can we connect and be joyful and positive thinking, which is sometimes very difficult with what might be going around us in our family or community or whatnot. But I feel like that's the community I want to resonate with and continue my journey. And so, it's my passion.
Yeah, I'm from British Guiana, and one of the programs that they have, Western civilization have about countries like mine, they call us third world countries, and they're, of course, first world. And then you look at that and you want to investigate, well, what is that? The third world countries, if you will, their food supplies are much closer to the earth. I left America in 2020, I think, or 2021. And when I was there and I ate the food and all that stuff, and I just came back from there and all of these things started happening again. Um, the food that we ate in the States made me sick, mucus, constantly. Another thing was I gained a lot of weight quickly, and I knew I couldn't wait to get out of there because when I came to Asia and the third world countries, the food that I was eating, all of the sicknesses and disease that I had were dropping off one at a time, one at a time. When I would go to the hospital and get the doctor and get checked, this would be gone, that be gone, this be gone. I remember taking pill for acid reflux and everything for years. In the United States, I stepped out. I started eating closer to the earth. And I never had to take a pill whatsoever. I
Yeah.
went back in America a couple of weeks ago, and after a week or so, 2 weeks of food that was being I was eating, I ran to the store to get acid. It's just absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
The food supply in America has nothing to do with health. Absolutely nothing. It is not designed for health. It is designed to make one sick in order to support the other industries that they have, the health industry. All the chemicals is to numb the brain so that you can eat more, eat more, eat more, and obesity comes in. And so you have this symbiotic relationship of destruction of the human body.
Yeah, and
As
then
a
we're at the mercy of these systems that will say, this is how you regain it. And like you said, it's really becoming more and more close to the earth, and the foods coming from the earth
Yeah,
are even walking the earth. I mean, there's obviously some cities where people never even touch foot on
yeah,
the ground, and we're kind of further and further away from our grounding signals that connect with the universe. And
yeah.
it's a suffering lower frequency that allows these systems to control us.
Yeah, and once you have inflammation in the body, it creates havoc when it comes to health. And that is the beginning of all the decline within the human body. Once we introduce inflammation, and it'll cause all kinds of stuff. And so, yeah, you guys have to become mindful of what you're eating. What you say in America is organic. You even have to be aware of that, because once a corporation got into the organic field, they polluted that as well. So find some of those local farmers market and go find yourself, get in there and stuff like that. Because like I said, once corporations got into organic thing, that organic is just a terminology that they mix all kinds of crazy stuff. I've seen that
Yeah,
with my own
and that
eyes.
really is the best source is like local organic or, and I do even question some of the local farmers because a lot of them didn't want to go through the bureaucracy of labeling their foods as organic.
Yep.
Yet I notice that their practices are consistent with that. And so I really just kind of try to talk directly to the farmers and ask them about what their practices are and their philosophy. And so many of them are so passionate about creating
Hmm.
foods that do feed the human soul. And those are the people that I want to support. These small farmers that have diverse crops really think about the soil being alive, not dirt,
Yep.
and thinking about the microbiome element. And so, that's absolutely the ones that I want to support, not these, monocrops, corporations and such. Yeah.
Yeah. So here you are as a mother, then a scientist that has seen firsthand and has experienced firsthand the ability to have a good effect on the type of food that one eats. Talk to me about that journey. What did you begin to see in your body? Because it's also in the initial state of the conversation. You said that as you're seeing now, it affects the spiritual part of us as well, and how we behave, the emotional part, all of it. As a mom, as a scientist that had embarked on that journey, what results did you see in you and in your daughter as you both are walking this journey together and learning about your relationship to food and how it impacts your life and your thinking, your body, and everything?
Yeah, I mean, for me, and I went pretty hardcore when I was discovering where all the hidden sources of glutamate were. I was going pretty hardcore with pretty much all whole foods, eating in balance, making sure there was the macronutrients that were in balance, and that's all laid out in the book Fat, Stressed, and Sick: MSG, Processed Foods, and America's Health Crisis. But the transformation for me, I could feel within a week, feeling so much better. My blood glucose levels were much more stable. I used to get very
Hmm.
lightheaded, almost faint, heart palpitations, so all of that went away. I just felt like my body metabolism was much more regulated. I wasn't intending to lose weight, but I lost weight, which was a much healthier weight. The brain fog, like I said, I literally didn't even know what brain fog was until I didn't have it. Just
Yeah.
a lot, less congestion and headaches.
Hmm.
I had suffered low grade headaches all my life, completely gone. I also suffered a lot of allergies, like pollen allergies, kitty cat allergies, dust allergies. Those went completely away. And it
Yeah.
was because I lowered my inflammatory load so much that these other environmental, entities in my life I was no longer reacting to them. My disposition was so much better. Like I said, I typically could have been like a anxious energizer bunny sort of, person. And I just felt a lot more calm, a lot more happy, a lot more energetic. And it made it then easier to exercise or appreciate nature. When you're
Yeah.
in that survival mode, you're literally your whole day, like you mentioned, the time entity of our life, you're like just feeling like a robot through your
Yeah.
life. And that just all went away where I'm like, I'm starting to more appreciate the journey, whether it was the commute, being stuck in traffic, even. And I'm like, okay, let's just take some deep breaths, just really appreciating more the present moment from the just food alone. Just, I mean, and it just allowed me to connect with my body much more. With my youngest daughter, so my youngest daughter is 10 years younger than my next child, which my son, and then my was 12 years younger than my eldest daughter. So I have three children. So my youngest daughter was, my other children were kind of approaching preteens and the teenage. And, so I unfortunately did not have this food knowledge, through much of their younger days.
Yeah.
So with my youngest daughter, I was like, okay, you're young. You're like, she was 3 and a quarter age about this time. I'm like, it was easy to control her diet. It was very easy to say to my other children, hey, I'm not bringing this other food in the house anymore. This is what I'm bringing in the house. Quality control, I'm paying for it. And so when I was making dinners and such, I'm being as consistent as possible as to what I thought would be helpful for them. Of course, at this age, they're going to friends' house and such, so
Hmm.
it was more difficult to control the older children's diet completely. But my youngest, she's with mom. Mom's making it, and I'm eating the same things as her. So when we started out the journey with her autism, she wasn't really speaking. She wasn't communicating. Everything was just repeating. And she would go through these, what was almost an extreme temper tantrum that you see in these 2-year-olds. These would last 4 hours, 2 hours. I mean, the only way they were ending was she was just exhausted. So then she'd fall asleep and she'd wake up and she'd resume the same, was like looping. It was almost like her brain was looping in this very uncalm, anxious state, firing. And so before the diet, the family dynamics were pretty traumatizing. Nobody really
Yeah.
wanted to take her out of the house to even grocery shop because we feared this just explosive, tantrum. And even in the house, you're walking on pins and needles here to kind of be like, okay, I'm not sure if that's going to set her off, and it could be hours before we're getting her back to some sort of state of stable. I mean, it wasn't necessarily calm, but more stable. So those completely went away. We changed the food, and I changed the food drastically when I did the research, came up with a plan, and here's what I'm going to do. If I don't see a change within, a month, we will pursue other avenues. Within that 1 month, her language started to explode. Her disposition, like I said, it went from fear, panic, dread, depression, anxiety, that was very dysfunctional, to this is the best day ever. She was just excited about life, social. She
Hmm.
shut down social, or, that was just that was her vibration then. Her vibration changed to loving being with people and actually being almost the Pied Piper with, hey, let's play tag, and just kind of
Yeah.
loving being around other people and children. Her disposition, I'd say, was the most thing. Like her facial expressions, you really couldn't understand what she was feeling or experiencing or thinking because it really it didn't have expression. Um, and that just transformed too, where she's just like so happy, and you could just see on her face what she was feeling and what she was experiencing a lot more. So the change in her was just even more transformational than, I think other people were seeing in me, although they were noticing, changes in me. But it just fueled my motivation even more to continue on this journey. Like, okay, this is it. The
Yeah.
foods have got to be, thought about, rethinking food.
Yeah.
It was clear.
And as you saw that and you had the burden to come out and you wrote the book and so forth, and you wanted the world to know when you started that particular journey, how did it come about when you were on the stage, if you will, enunciating to all that it's the food, it's the food, it's the food? How did that happen?
How did that happen?
Yeah.
I think by talking to other people in my close community, friends and family and such, they were encouraging me to say, this needs to get out there further. And so then I would go to autism groups, in the Bay Area here called Parents Helping Parents, where I would just talk about my journey. And it was all about, just these small little communities of, people telling about what has helped them in their life. And so I would share this journey and they're like, this needs to get out there broader. And so I started a nonprofit called unblindmymind.org to really kind of raise awareness about this glutamate in the food supply and all of these other chemicals and such are really inflaming us. And we could do so much better to feeling better by making better choices. And so, started that, and I was still kind of working with biotechnology a little bit. And then when I really wanted to commit to putting the effort and time into writing the book, I was like, the corporation and biotechnology was just kind of conflicting with that, well, time and honestly, my passion. And so, kind of just really focused and fully dove into food
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
helping others through the food supply. But it really was other people encouraging me, and that, everybody has their journey and some, don't want to out there, but I actually personally love speaking on stage, love it. And so we'll never probably write another book again. That was definitely more challenging.
Yeah.
But I love, speaking. So I was telling somebody my story on the beach in Santa Cruz, and they said, have you ever thought about doing a TED Talk? And I said, I would love to do one. And so he just had some connections. And so I ended up doing a TEDx talk, and that just kind of helped fuel my passion with, the information. And the more that this resonated with other people and how appreciative they were of that message, and then getting feedback from them that this was a life changer for them, it fueled my journey even more as it continues to fuel my journey, speaking with you.
Yeah, I was watching that TED Talk today as well and gaining some insight from some other interviews as well. So here you are today. I believe in your mission because I saw it for myself, what it did to me, my own body, and the inflammation, that the headaches, all the headaches that I was having. And when I came back recently from America, I'm talking about a couple of weeks ago, had headaches there, just waking up from eating. After I got there and I started eating again, the American stuff, within 2 weeks, my head just kept, I came out of there. I'm no longer eating that type of stuff, and I'm eating closer to the earth, a lot more veggies, a lot more stuff, and headaches are gone. The mucus that I was just all the time, the acid, all of it just
Oh,
disappearing, guys. And I'm telling you, we're going to provide Catherine's book, the links to all of that stuff. I need you guys to get in there. I'm telling you, it's the food. It's the food, guys. They did another, I think, a part two to corporations, two documentaries of that, and they actually pinpoint from the data the day that they knew that they introduced cancer and all of these different types of disease into the society, and all the different things and the chemicals and the what it's doing to the human body back in the 50s. And so I want to invite all of you guys to rethink what you're eating. It is the food. The body needs nutrient. And the food that we're eating, the processed food that we're eating and consuming in America, and many of the things that we thought that are healthy, they're not as well. So you need to develop a plan as to how to change that and do that. And you just look around in your neighborhood and you'll find out. So here you are. I think it's the 4th of March, is it? Somewhere around there
or
for
maybe the 5th of March.
the
Yeah.
5th. Yeah. Yeah. You have a mic, Catherine, and this mic affords you to speak to the human race, all of us collectively at one time. What would you say to us?
Let's find our higher vibration so that we can all spiritually connect with the universe and live a life of thriving. And food is a part of that. Good thoughts are a part of that. Compassion. And I absolutely look forward to resonating with people in that higher vibrational frequency and getting out of this survival mode where we're really struggling and suffering. Of course, suffering is part of life, but it's also recognizing what is that suffering telling you and what are you going to do about it. I look forward to connecting with as many people as possible on this mission and that higher vibrational journey.
And before we go, I want to go back and circle back to something that you and I had talked about earlier. We alluded to it, the connectedness between spirituality and within our process, our growth, if you will. As you being a mom and a scientist and so forth, and you moving through your journey, and I'm sure you had some really tough days. Talk to us as to your connectiveness of the spiritual aspect of the individual as they're growing, and in conjunction also with, because it's, you told us some of the aspects of eating correctly, the foggy brain and all that stuff, the foggy thoughts. How did all of that help you to connect to the spiritual part of you? Because we talked about the breathing and the breath and stuff like that. And that is the introduction of meditation and all of that stuff. How did that enter into your space?
Yeah, I would say the food was instrumental in helping me then go on my spiritual journey. I don't think I would have really found my spiritual journey if I was in the inflamed state and my family was in that inflamed state before that. So the food element, I feel like, was the first phase that really kind of helped shift me into less suffering, less pain, less inflammation, moods, better energy. And then the spiritual component probably didn't come for another couple of years. It really was other sorts of things that were coming into my life, reminding me that this is still feeling, like a lot of suffering and pain. And then kind of, being more open to it. I think that's the other thing is you have to be in the receiving mode and, really kind of start attracting more of that message of how do I connect more spiritually? But yeah, the journey probably happened. I mean, I would say 5 years after the whole food thing. So the food thing was a complete, huge, beautiful part of the first phase.
Yeah.
But, the whole spiritual element was a whole other shift. And I felt like I completely shifted dimensions in a way there that I just hadn't experienced. But I realized how easy it is to access once you're aware of it and you
Hmm.
practice it. You practice,
Yeah.
practice, practice, and being like, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to connect with the universe and the frequency of the universe. And I think my science helped me understand that we are human beings in this physical body of electrical signaling.
Hmm.
And the more that we connect that electrical signaling to the universe of electrical signaling, we're resonating on the same frequency and it feels very peaceful and calm. It's when we're discordant with our electrical signaling in our body with that of the universe that we are constantly reminded that we're not feeling calm and peaceful. So just understanding some of that science element to it has been absolutely transformational too. And when I started to look at how the glutamate signaling in the body, when it's in excess, can contribute to that fight, flight, fear, fawn, survival response, I realized that our thoughts alone can contribute to a lot of excessive glutamate signaling. Just being surrounded by peaceful nature can help with lowering the glutamate signaling so that we're more, resonating with the frequency of the universe. And so when I started to even understand more of that science, it helped my physical entity better understand how to achieve that. But as I really on Sunday was very spiritual, my sister who struggled with a battle with cancer, and she ate like a saint. I mean, she really ate for her entire life that I remember her. She was eating the foods of the earth. And I think a lot of the trauma that was unresolved with her really, really contributed to that disease state. But as her older sister, I was there to help her transition out of her physical body and, try to find that peace in the universe. And so I know my sister's with me now in spirit here, and she's my, she'll be my guardian angel, and she saw that how I protected her. But it is interesting to just kind of see that we don't ever leave this universe. We might leave our physical entity body, but our energy and soul are always here.
Yeah,
And
we're
so
still
this
connected.
we're
Yeah.
connected. We're all connected.
And I started this program, this podcast, by telling you guys of Catherine's situation about her sister, and I'm going to end it that way as well. I want you guys to, again, Threads of Enlightenment family, to support her, send her energy so that she can manage
Thank you.
her time, so that she can learn, be able to dig deep as to who she is, but that support is there for her so that she can rest and be at peace within herself as she is afforded the opportunity to expand. So we want to send that type of energy to you. And
Thank
thank
you.
you
I
so
appreciate
much
that.
for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Ken. That was probably like again, there's no coincidences. This podcast came at a certain time that couldn't be better timing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully, you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.